Email selected records via an Excel document. This tutorial applies to PHP Runner. After the release of this tutorial, where I email selected records via a PDF attachment, many asked if the same can be done instead of a PDF. They would like to attach an Excel document, an XLS file. The quick answer to that is yes, it can be done. And this is what I will show you here. Here I created a button and I just call it XLS. Going to the events page. On the client before event, I'm just gonna uncomment everything. I will hard code the email addresses. If you want to see how to ask for an email account, please just watch the previous tutorials. It is explained in detail over there. Okay, on the server event, since we are going to extract the selected records in an Excel document, we need to import the Excel library. PHP Runner comes out of the box with the PHP Excel library already available. So no need for you to go and add it. It's already here. If you want to use a different library, then you will have to add it yourself. In this case, we are just going to require, it's under plugins, PHP Excel.php and then also Excel5.php. That's the two files that we're going to need for this demonstration. And then we will have to create an object. And now we have an Excel object. The first thing after the object, we will have to set the document properties. Now this is where you supplied information about the Excel file. Now we're going to set the active sheet index to the first sheet. So Excel, when you open it, it will open to this sheet. So if you want it to open the second sheet, you will change this value to 1. If you want it to open on the first one, you will just set it to 0. Now this is now where the fun starts. We need to add the first row, which will include the headings. Now here I opened a blank Excel sheet just so that we can understand what's going on. Most of you will probably understand the columns is marked A, B, C, D and so on. So we want to, the first row we want to put in our field headings, and then the actual data starts at row 2 for A, B and C and so on. Okay, to add the first row we are going to say the object get the active sheet, and we are going to set the cell value A1, B1, C1, D1, E1 and so on. And we need to specify the actual field names. At the after table initialized event, I'm just going to copy the field names and go back to the server event, and I will add them all here. Now please note, this is the field names and not the actual label. So if you renamed the field name to a different label, then you can actually use a function that will look that up with the correct language. And that function is called labels get field label. So the table name will go in where this dollar table is, and then the field description. So let's say this country code, we can use the country code as the field description over here. And then the table is going to be, if I go to the after table initialize event, I can copy the table again. That is just called city. And then the table, we can say the the city. Okay, so obviously this is a way. This will return the label for this country field, and we can now use this instead of the country code. You can do that now with each and every field. Next, we're gonna have to add the data, and I will do that with a while loop on the selected records. So yeah, I just count the records. It's 2 because I want my records to start populating at the second row. So that's why that is set with at 2 and not 1, because if you do it 1, it will override this A1 column over here. So I must start at 2. Okay, now I'm just gonna populate the cell values. It's exactly the same, just this time I don't hard code anything like A, B, C, D, E. 1, I just don't give it any number, but I give the rec count. So you can think now the first record that comes through will have rec count 2, so A2 will be the first row, and then when it loops again, 8, 3, and so on. And then the selected data will be the field names as well. Okay, now we are populating during this loop everything. Now if you want to update any of the records, let's say there's maybe a flag in a table that you want to set to exported equals true, whatever, you can now basically do it right here in this same loop for each record. But no need for me to do that right now. And then just before the loop end, we will have to add 1 to rec count every time, else it's going to put all the records on the same row. Okay, I'm going to rename the worksheet now, and I will create a new object writer, and I'm going to save this into a TMP folder on my server. So if you don't want to email your Excel document, this is more or less where you can stop now. That document will be saved as whatever file name you gave it over here. So again, you can now set this file name to variables to have different file names, maybe add date, time, maybe user, whatever. Now we're gonna just create an array again for the email. We get the absolute path of the exact same file name, and we will name it exactly the same. That is just for this array over here that we are going to use in the runner mail object soon. And here we send out the email exactly like I've shown already in the other buttons. And then here we do a test to see what the result was, so that we can set this message in a suite alert in the client after event. And then in the client after event, we are simply going to test if it was successful, and that's basically it. But before I continue, having A, B, C, D and E over here is kinda not convenient whatsoever. I mean, so you have to now specify the letters for each column here manually. And there is actually a much better way. I've done it in this way, so you can, for those of you who want to do it like this, by all means go ahead, but there is a better way. Let me show you. Also, setting this document properties over and over and over again is probably this section over here, and we are going to calculate A, B and C with functions. So if I go to the after application initialized event, this is here where I want to create 2 functions. The first function I just called XLS header object, and the second function I just name it number to alpha or num to alpha. What this function does is when you supply the function with 0, it's going to return A. If you supply the function with 1, it's going to return B. and so on. And if when it reaches the end of the alphabet, if you supply the function, I think with 25, it will be AA. That is what it's going to return. So we're going to use this function to basically populate. Now let's go back to the server event and see how we're going to change this code now to work better. Directly after I create the object, I also create a session with the current table, and I do this, I set this session at the after table initialized event over here. I think you may have seen this already. That is just to get the dollar table, which is the current table we are working with, equals city. We'll now go through to wherever I called this session. So that is the only thing that happens over there. I am now going to set an array. Note that I actually use the actual value set create in the array over here. So it's the same. So in actual fact, this is now not needed anymore. Set active sheet, that can stay as it is because we are still going to need to do that. Remember, we created this object. I'm going to send the object into the function. I also need to rename this sheet, and you can just call it whatever you feel like is good. That's just a sheet name in the Excel document itself. Okay, so everywhere where I use this A, B, and C, I'm gonna remove all of that because we are now going to call the function. Okay, this time we do a recount as well. Select the data, we're gonna loop through the data. Now if my recount is equals to 2, in other words the first record, I'm going to call this Excel head object, which is the first object over here. What this function accept is everything that we going to include, the actual object, because it's going to return that object, the document properties which we have already there, selected data, we're currently busy with the selected data, and then the table name. Now in this case, $table is defined over there. We now have column count. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to loop through each and every column count, send the first value, which is 0, to the function. The function will return A, B, C, or whatever it needs to return to us, and we're gonna say, okay, this is A plus then the recount, which is that point is 2, so that will A2, and then the field value. The field value comes from the array. I do a manual for each loop through the array, and then we just add 1 to column every time, as simple as that. The rest is the same. We rename the worksheet and all of that. Let's see how this works. Okay, here we have the project. I'm going to select record 2, 6, 11 and 12. Click the XLS button, and apparently the mail was sent. This is the email I just received. And there we have it, records 2, 6, 11 and 12. So by the way, what I didn't tell you is that this functions grabs the actual labels and does not use the field names. Go back to the after application initialize event. You will note that over here we actually use the labels get field label from the actual description. And so yes, this is really nice. So thank you very much for watching. Any questions, suggestions, please don't hesitate. Thank you very much. Till next time.